My name is Sean Thomas, and I'm the author of Be More Today, a 40-day guide to a better version of you. As doctor of physical therapy, I've seen thousands of people do great things. They came to me with ailments, physical ailments, pain, issues, and they got through them, all because they decided in their mind they were going to do it. And I guarantee you, if you just trust the process and be persistent, you too can be the best version of you. Have you ever been out and about with nowhere to stash your keys and ID so you can be hands-free? Whether you're running errands, traveling, or hitting the trail, Spy Belt is a belt that goes where you go. Made with stretchable fabric and a low-profile design, Spy Belt is your perfect companion to keep your essentials secure without bouncing or chafing. Choose from several prints and colors in the original, a wider band in the Pro versions, or the newest Spy Belt, Whiteout, an all-white belt that is perfect for summer. Visit www.spybelt.com to get your Spy Belt today. Run smart, run free, run with Spy Belt. Don't let aches and pains hold you back from living your life. At Adjah Physical Therapy, our experienced clinicians create a personalized treatment plan that fit each and every patient's needs uniquely. Whether it's recovering from an injury or enhancing your performance, we've got you covered. With over 150 locations throughout New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, there is sure to be a JAG Physical Therapy location near you. Visit jagpt.com and book an appointment today to get back the life you love. That's jagpt.com, jagpt.com.
Welcome to the Be More Today show. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our show today. Now, let's hear it from our host, Dr. Sean Thomas.
What's going on, folks? Your boy again, Dr. Sean Thomas, back in the building with the Be More Today show. We are back in the building, folks. And again, season 5 is here, and it has been a blessed season. I gotta say, in our 5th season now, we've had so many dynamic guests on this show who are being more in their own regard, but they're doing things. It's breathtaking, really, looking at the progress, the process, the resilience, and each guest has a sense of community that is bigger than themselves. So it's just been a blessing connecting with so many people on this season. One of the best seasons I think we've had on this show. Again, the show is heard now 86 countries, over 64,000 downloads. Again, thanks to you and your love and support, this show has grown. In the 10 years we've been doing Be More Today things, right? 10 years ago, we started this movement, and it continues to move thanks to you. So I salute you. I appreciate you. Your love does not go unnoticed. And as always, BeMoreToday.com for everything. My book, the podcast, our Facebook pages, all the things that you know Be More Today are about. Check BeMoreToday.com for all those things. You will not be disappointed. Our quote for today is simple as always. Make sure you steward your relationships well, because it's not about getting to the top. It's who you're getting to the top with. By Albert C. Eugene. I don't know about you, but for me, this year has been about really making sure that I'm around and surrounding myself with people who are going to lift me up, who are going to big me up, and people who are going to let me know when I'm acting outside of myself. The moments when I'm not on my game, where I'm being defensive, which I know that's something that I'm still struggling with. Defensiveness runs in my family. It's something my wife continues to let me know that I am still being. And, you need people like that in your life who are going to, yes, have your back when things get tough, when it's dark, when you have no money, when you have no food, they are there for you. And those who are going to also be like, yo, you need to make sure that when you do this, you do this, because it can't just be the greatness in you. It has to be you at the high and at the low. And relationships are tough. I mean, it's hard to really make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that have your back, whether it's someone you're married to, with, etc., or a family, friend, whatever, cousins, brothers, whoever's going to be. They're tough. And as I looked at my relationships in my life and on this show, there's so many people that I could have brought on the show today to talk about relationships, but I had to bring on a friend who, again, I ran against, and now we're buds virtually. I haven't seen him in person yet in the last couple of years, but I hope that we can make that thing happen. We talked about it last time; it didn't happen yet, but I'm looking for that to happen sometime in the next year. And he is none other than one of the biggest shows we had for last season of the Be More Today show, Dr. Lawrence Adjah. Now, Dr. Lawrence, Pastor Lawrence, he's a man of so many talents, an accomplished leader, best-selling author, social entrepreneur, dedicated to helping individuals and communities establish and strengthen their relationships with God, with other people, and with themselves. Known for addressing the issue of loneliness in the digital age, he founded the Family Dinner Foundation. Its key initiative, Our Family Dinner, reached nearly 50,000 young adults in 40 cities nationwide, fostering lifelong relationships through shared meals. Adjah's work has been featured in Ebony, Black Enterprise, Essence, Chicago and Miami Tribunes, and other nationally syndicated outlets. He also addresses mental health and wellness as a host and panelist for the Just Heal Bro Global Tour. He authored the best selling The 100 Marriage Decisions and Declarations You Need to Make Before Getting Married, offering guidance towards a prepared lifelong marriage. We're going to talk about that today.
Mhm.
Additionally, he's narrated the audio version of the Bible in 2024, and he's done so many things as a licensed and ordained minister, certified marriage counselor, and chaplain. Adjah provides gospel based counseling, spiritual direction, chaplaincy, and life coaching to professionals and organizations. Beginning his career at McKinsey and Company after being an All American track and field athlete. And folks, if you don't know, this guy was bad. He was bad. He was so bad I didn't like seeing him on the other side of the track because he had his H on his shirt and it had the B on my shirt. And this Ivy League competition thing was real. But now we're brothers, and I just salute him and I support him in so many ways. He's done
Mhm.
so many things, holding a BA from Harvard, an MBA from Stanford's Graduate School of Business, the Masters of Education from the University of Texas in Austin with distinction, and the MDiv from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, receiving the Preaching Award and the John D. Tate Award. Lauren serves as an advisory board member and former president of the board of directors for the Harvard Black Alumni Association. And Lawrence also serves on the board of directors for the Urban World Film Festival and formerly served on the national board of New City Kids. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pets included, please welcome to the stage my boy, our pastor, accomplished author, and friend, Dr. Lawrence Adjah. Lawrence,
Oh
what's
man,
going
brother,
on, man?
man, brother. What they don't know is that I got you a water sponsorship, spring water, because I know to say all of that, you were paid and you were prepared to say, man, I'm so thankful, just to be with you. He was very generous. My brother, Dr. Sean, was very generous, but I shared with him. It is a great honor. I have such great respect for him, for his work, and I always have, even when he had to be on his chest. Uh, it still was there. But I will say, I think he's somewhat prophetic because he said Dr. Lawrence Adjah. I was like, I guess I need to get that doctorate. So I'm gonna take that. This is the fourth time this week, so I'm gonna take that as the Lord saying I need to do that. But really thankful to be with you. It was a great honor to speak with you last time and got some great feedback even from some of your listeners. And again, any opportunity for us to fellowship, I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely. Listen, I thought I read doctor, but maybe that's right. Maybe it's just the way it's supposed to be. Repetition does happen. So we're gonna
Yeah,
pray on that for sure. And
yes.
yes, you did have the highest rated show for our last season, season 4. We had so many people who were really engaged in the conversation we had about family, about faith, and about fitness. And it was very,
Mm,
very moving to hear your strong words and affirmations then. And now moving forward to see what you've done in that year time span. It's been amazing to see the progression and the growth. I've been following you ever since. I like everything you put up. I if I could like it twice, I would. Right, but
mm,
I just love that your spirit and your gentleness and your kindness is always out there. I mean, I've been seeing you do so many things in various places, speaking to men,
mm,
men and women, but just men talking about what the struggles really are. And I got jealous not being a part of those conversations, but I was very
mm,
empowered to see your presence in those rooms, in those spaces. And I could just imagine that they were blessed because what you bring to the table is so powerful in so many ways. So I appreciate you, sir. And, I want to talk first about the Family Dinner Foundation. We talked about it a little bit last time. And In a time when we're talking about community, and I'm all about community as I'm the engagement and inclusion director for my job. I do so much with community for my church, or try to, it places it's a big place in my heart. So talk to us about, again, family dinner, um, and what you're doing with family dinner at this time, and how it's been so successful in the last year or so.
I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak about it. I would say the vision expanded. Our mission is to connect the world as a family at and beyond the dinner table. The genesis of it was in 2008, where again, I moved back to the city. Again, I was part of the Facebook class at Harvard, 2006. Facebook was started by my classmate. But I arrived at a city, people starting their careers, people doing well professionally, but interpersonally, there was this collective malaise around, I just don't feel connected. I don't really know anybody. I just work, or it's always networking and people just size you up. I just don't feel like I have community. And so that kind of spurred on a kind of acts to, as well as a ode to my family, level of hospitality, a level of stranger, to say, let's break bread, let's put our phones away, and let's actually, this experiment is, could we create a family like dynamic for people who aren't blood related and for people who want to build community, and they don't want to feel like they have to soft shoe their way or dance or qualify
Mm.
for a relationship. And so that grew. And so for about 10 plus years, and then 12 years, I would say, through to 2020, we were really on this upward, trajectory, growing far beyond even our capacity. We had about 400 volunteers. But I realized, I said, the vision was always that this was going to be a people, right? If you take a faith perspective, there was an inspiration, was Acts 2. In the book of Acts, they're starting the church. And in that early church, they talked about in Acts 2:42, they said they dedicated themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. And then as a response, people in the communities were watching these people get together, break bread, fellowship, and take care of each other. They said they had everything in common. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody didn't have land, somebody didn't have food. They took care of each other. They said it made the faith so attractive that even at the end of the verse, said 3,000 were added to their number daily. And so I said, man, like there is something about this that I want this to be a people, like the community, like you actually are joining a family and it actually operates like a family. I'm like, that's how wild it should be. But you can imagine we're growing, we're doing these big dinners, we're at Essence Festival, we're doing all these things. I said, I don't want this to be a dinner on blanc, so to speak, black.
Right.
Right. But this is a feature, it's like making your church about Sunday service and nothing else. I said, I want to test out more like community, like the smaller dinner. So people go to the big dinners to kind of see the community, see the vastness, and just kind of fellowship with one another.
Yeah.
But then they can go by life stage to smaller groups, right? So whether you're single, whether you're 55 plus, we partner with AARP and you need community, or you want an intergenerational group of 55 plus, a young family, college age student, all taking care of each other. I wanted to test it. So through from 2018 through to like 2022, I said through the pandemic, we're going to test mutual care.
Mm.
We're going to do small groups, and we're going to test this thing called mutual care. And we came up with this concept called 5C. And it's going to get to your question. So 5C was, we need to also have a baseline set of expectations for people in terms of how they take care of each other. So the concept was 5C. It would start with, you're committed to these people for a period of 10 to 12 weeks, which was like one season. You commit to actually connecting at least once every other week. So every other week. So meaning that if, during the pandemic, some people will go to Costco together. They'll go on walks together, at least bi-weekly. Communication was the next C. So communication, so you couldn't go a week without, you have to speak to people at least once a week. So you already know if people were in this group, if they went more than a week and didn't hear from somebody, we would assume something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so people knew that they would hear from people, and that was expectation. And then the last two C's were the game changers. You had crisis and celebration. Crisis was if anything happens to you that you consider crisis, I lost my job, I'm sick, family member passed away, something's happened, whatever it is, you had an obligation to share it with the group. Everyone in the group, there's groups of no more than 5 people, unless you had a kind of intergenerational group that was bigger. Right. Everyone would call you individually within 24 hours. And then the group within a week would come up with something as a way to care for you. Mm. Same thing with celebration. Hey, a remission from cancer. Hey, promoted at my job. My birthday. Same thing. You would share it. And so people now, we were learning how to be, we were learning how to be human again.
Yeah.
We're learning how to build relationships again.
Yeah.
And so seeing the success of that, fast forward, we realize that at the end of the day, the Surgeon General, as most people know, Surgeon General said there's a crisis of loneliness. I'm like, but usually if they're telling you that, it's already late. And so I said, you know what? Not only do we need to build this community up and continue to thrive, we need this mutual care is important, but also we need to partner with cities. And so part of the vision is now expanded to say, at the end of the day, this is a world issue. And that not only did this community that you could be a part of to at least fellowship once to twice a year in the big groups, be a part of groups like life groups, essentially during some, this think about it, it's like for someone who doesn't have church, we take for granted that we have life groups, we have all this stuff. Imagine for someone who don't go to church, who don't know nobody. You give them an opportunity to fellowship and be taken care of within that group. But then we say, how do we partner with the cities to make sure there is some sort of program, at least that happens once a year, that similarly puts them in community? We have a larger dinner and we do the same. Yeah. And so the vision expanded to now include cities. And so even, by the grace of God, was now a presidential leadership scholar. That was a big scholarship. And I said, hey, one of the things I want to do is I want, as part of my project for the country, is now get these in at least 10 cities and then hopefully have 100 cities by the next 5 years. That's part of our work. Other piece that's part of our work is that we say, hey, the reality is that if you're part of these groups, that's one way. But we realize that at the end of the day, like we have now a decade, we have a generation that's now going into latter years in ways that no other generation has before. Many are not married. Many are not in community where they grew up, right? So the certain levels, I mean, even in scripture, it talks about God sets the lonely in families, Isaiah. Like his original unit of community and not being lonely was the family. It's not good for man to be alone, even being married. And so now you have this dynamic just at a macro level of that. And so I said, at the end of the day, we need more community that goes beyond it. And so that Acts community, they live together. And so one of the larger projects, this is my decade project, right? I'm here in Texas. I moved to Texas in part to do this work. I said, this needs to be a subdivision community like Seneca Village. If people are familiar with before Central Park, there's a community of our people. Well, we've already seen this concept. So now it operates almost like a college for adults, like an educational institution, but experiential learning. And so you could go there if you're after school. If you just graduated, you could be there for 3 years because you have a job 3 years. If you're older, you could do 4 years. And if you've been 4 years, now you live in a community. This community has dinner once a week.
Yeah.
You're part of a community group that's part of your quote unquote class. And then ultimately you have co-working, you have a gym, you have a dining hall, which anybody around the surrounding community could come to. And you literally get to live. It's like now, if you're in Texas, you live in a subdivision, it's the same thing. But now you just have somebody dedicated to say, this community is distinctly known, like the Acts Church, like the Seneca Village, for taking care of one another. And so that is now the expansion of the vision to connect the world as a family and beyond the dinner table. Not only are we doing revamping the dinners, at least at a citywide level. Number two, we're doubling down on a mutual care group so that everyone's a part of a mutual care group who desires it. 3, we're partnering with cities to ensure that love thy neighbor, right? There shouldn't be lonely people around the world if Christians are around the world. And so love thy neighbor, right? No matter what denomination you are, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. This is the clarion call of this generation, is that for Christians to rise up to love their neighbor by virtue of ensuring that they're not alone or lonely, which are 2 separate things.
Yes.
Right. And so that's part of the work. And then ultimately the live, work, play community, where I think people see that now, but now think of it as almost like a college campus for adults, but they're living, you have adults, and now they know they can go to a community. We have senior living, but man, some of us won't make it to seniors because we're so lonely and disconnected. So why don't we have a community that's familial? It's familial community for people who desire it.
Man, listen, I don't even know where to start. I love the concept. I'm glad it's growing. I've always been a supporter, and I think everyone knows when there's food on the table or food in the room, it brings everyone together. No matter where you're from, walk of life, like you said, it's just that binding thing. Food and music, right? It's one of those things that just bring people together, and all of the biases, all of the things that can get in the way of people connecting, go out the window. and conversations happen, and bonds are broken, and relationships are made. So it's beautiful that you're using that and have used that as the medium. I think I'm taking from that a number of things, but the one thing that you said that hits me hard is love,
Mm,
and the lack of love that sometimes we see even in our Christian houses and in our Christian walks. And my question for you now, because you're a counselor, and you're someone who's now in the midst of giving the structure for this to so many people now around the world, right? And that by itself is great. You've gone beyond your block and even your church, right? And said, well, we're doing this here. Let's do it also in, other places in Texas and other places around the world, to do the same kind of setting, the same kind of format, to get people to come together to have the same breaking of bread, but also, like you said, the C's, right? To have that same structure so that it's not just about food, it's about community, it's about communing, it's about coming together, it's about, yes, work and play, all those things. Do you find that it's hard for people to buy into this concept? And I mean, I guess
mm,
I'm not saying just Christians. I'm saying people in general. Because I'm basing it real on the question of the love topic that you brought up. Because I find sometimes that yes, we can talk about all these things you want to do, but when it comes down to the basics of community, like you said, it is love. It's a love
mm,
thing. Love should be in the middle of all those things. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That should be the foundations of so many things. But I find sometimes that we want to do these things, but there's a lack of love that comes with it. And if it's not in our
mm,
heart to do that thing the right way, then either why are we doing it, or the people who are trying to do it feel like they're pulling teeth for others
mm.
to come in and do the same work. What are your thoughts on this as you've seen your model being exemplified across the country? Do you find that people are like, "Yo, this sounds great, I'm on board," or do you find it's like, "Yo, maybe maybe someone else is better for it, that maybe they can do it, but maybe not for me this time"? What are your thoughts on that?
Man, that is a beautiful question, and I'm going to say I'm going to answer your question directly, and then I'm going to break it down on it. So my headline is yes and no. Yes and no, and the breakdown is that in our nature, I believe, whether what we're stamped as Imago Dei or anything, we all inherently want the blessing of community, but not the burden of community, right? And so, there is an ask, because even if you start at the top and talk about how do you define love, you ask 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers, tactical answers about what that looks like. But if you frame it less within, let's say, a biblical worldview, love is a person. It's the person of God, the Godhead. Love, he embodies it. It's not an attribute outside of him. But then two, if you look at an act, if you could say central galvanizing act of love was the cross. It was sacrifice. It was a burden. Yeah, he took on a burden, the debt of others that like he didn't deserve to take that on. People didn't earn it, and he took that on. Love is literally you're taking on burden for someone else. You're lifting the interests of someone else to love them, meaning to sacrifice for their greater good, according to what God defines as good, which is Himself. And so I think it is a struggle when people understand the cost. But let me hold that there and just say, like, yes, when you ask, depending on who you're asking, right? Even to this day, people ask, man, like, we need this, right? There were people when they heard about family dinner or they got the invitation, they're like, man, I've been waiting for this for such a long time,
Mm,
right? I need this, right? Or you have people who say they need it, but they say it in a different realm or in a different language, right?
mm-hmm.
To say, I feel lonely, or they may say I'm depressed, or I don't know, I just lack. And they don't know, man. Like they don't know it's because the last day I haven't hugged somebody in weeks.
Mm.
I've just gone to work, come home, gone to work, come home. And so they're crying out, but the translation is like Tower of Babel. It's like people don't understand what they're saying
Yeah.
is that I need community, I need love, I need someone to sit down and care for me. I want to be with people, right? And so I think that there's something to be said, like, yes. So there are people who get it when they're invited, they understand. I think there's also people that you're on the other side of it, because think about it. In order for this to exist, right? To some degree, there have to have people who quote unquote don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. like if there's certain people who like, let's say it was for people to build community. Once they got their community, they could be like, I'm out. I got mine and now I'm out. But if there are people who now are in the community, never stay to welcome the people on and to train them up so they can be the same for other people, that community can't sustain.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are people who, quite frankly, there are people who need it. Like they're like, I need community. I have, I really desire to kind of be in a fellowship community. I don't have it from my church. I don't have that. But this is why this is a call for Christians. And this is a call. It's because even if you have it, sacrifice. I now have to think about beyond my own interests to love somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? Because I want them to have what somebody provided for me.
Yeah.
Because at some point I was that person and somebody decided to pause their own life, decide to allow me to be a part of the writing of that chapter, and then keep it pushing. Yeah. And so I would say that that's the yes and no, meaning like yes, depending on the yes and no, because you may not be a person who necessarily needs this from I need to receive community, but you may be someone who needs it from I need to serve so that other people in the community have community, right? Yeah. And so I would say that yes and no. I also say something a little bit more insidious though. And this is what's scary and this is what's at stake about this community piece. There's research that even shows that at some point, community, when you find yourself isolated, there's a reason why solitary confinement is lethal. It actually changes the structure of your brain. It shrinks your brain. If the solitary confinement is 24 hours without human contact, right? 24 hours, that's not a lot of time for many people. It starts to shrink your brain and it affects your eyesight. It actually makes you lose trust and you bring more anxiety around interaction. So think about how insidious that is. I need community and interpersonal connection to survive, to be healthy. But yet the longer I go without interaction, the more anxiety-inducing interaction is for me, right? It's like somebody's like the socially awkward, like socially adept. I need it, yet I'm afraid of it and I don't want it. And you may not even realize it. So a lot of times people play it like I'm antisocial. I'm like, no, you're not antisocial. You are isolated and you're actually in an unhealthy place. And so you say like, oh, it's now normal for me to just come home and take a nap or not go out. And people ask me to go out and I continue to say, no, no, no. Even though I really say I want to, it actually is a symptom of something. And that's what's insidious. There are people who need it and don't know. So the yes and no is like, yeah, there may be people who may be like, oh, that's not for me. Yet they're the same people who are saying like, I'm struggling, I feel off. And then think about even on the most basic level, this is more of a joke, but I think this is going to understand people. Even in the dating dynamic, there are people who kind of like, oh man, I need to meet somebody, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, do you leave your house? Nah. Right? Like, it's like, how are you? Is guy going to just zip them like FedEx this situation? Is this going to be an Amazon situation? But think about it. Usually, there's industries made on love. There's sales on love. There's movies on love. People desire love, even if it's for unhealthy reasons. At a fundamental level, you'll find universally people got to eat. People want love. Yeah. There are people who won't even leave their house, and that's the number one thing that they believe is causing them the most stress. Do you think it's because they're intentionally not wanting to go out, or they just overthink? I think there's something even that they're unconscious of. Because they've been so isolated, because it's become normal to be so disconnected and lonely, that they actually are having two wars inside. One they acknowledge, one they don't even realize. Yeah. And so I think this is why it's a yes and no. That there are people who need to say yes, they don't know they say yes. There are people who are saying yes through a different language. Yeah. Right. And I think that's why it's really, really important. But yes, you have people, by and large, most people who hear it say they see the value in it and say, yes, I want to be a part, or yes, I need it.
Yeah, I think I take a lot of things from that. I think you saying that people need it to serve is huge for me, because yeah, we need to serve, and having that structure to say, you know what, I need it, but someone else will benefit from this. They need it, so I'm about it. I think what I struggle with is that some people who say they are all about community are not doing that, and it's a sense of, yeah, I should do that. That's a great idea, but I got this going on, I got that going on, and someone else is going to do it instead. So they'll figure it out. And that bothers me because, again, I think that at any point in time, that could be us, that could be you, that could be me, who's yearning for something or yearning for that sense of community. And because we have it now, doesn't mean we're always going to have it. But because we have it now, some of us feel like, oh, I'm good. As opposed to being like, yeah, let me serve because that could be me one day. Or let me serve because it'll make me stronger in my own community so I can be better for the people who are around me. So, I'm again, I just salute you for that. And I think the segue for me now is to talk about this amazing book that you put
Brother,
out,
I was gonna
sir.
say, I was gonna say, if would you allow me to give one comment to your note, what you
Sure,
just
yeah,
said?
go ahead, go ahead, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll say quickly. I don't like platforming. The other
Mm,
side. What I call like the enemy, or what I will say is that I think that's been the biggest dupes of our time. I think the beauty of this time and this generation of self-care is this notion that we do need to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally. We now have language. We have better indicators for people to self-identify. We're eating healthier. We're doing things. So there's the beauty of that.
yeah.
The other side of that knife is the reality that sometimes there is this narrative we tell ourselves that sounds so heroic that everybody's like, I'm all so giving, I'm so giving, I don't care about myself. I'm like, somebody lying, because if everybody is so giving, somebody lying, right? Somebody lying, because if everybody's so giving. And what I know and what's true, and I think what is true biblically, and I think when you speak to it, is that actually it's not often lack of self-care, it's self-love. Actually, I think that
Mm,
sometimes we love and care for ourselves too much. I actually believe that on the other side of it, actually, our orientation is self-centeredness. We don't drift towards love. We don't drift towards love. Like, that's God, Jesus talking about, like, do this in remembrance of me. I'm like, we gonna forget Jesus? He went to the
mm,
cross. Like, Jesus himself had to talk about, do this in remembrance of me. We don't drift towards love. We drift towards self-centeredness. You don't
mm,
have to teach a child to say mine.
yeah.
That is in our DNA. And so I say that to say, I think sometimes with the dialogue publicly, it
Mm,
convinced ourselves we're more benevolent than we really are. And we've convinced ourselves that we're more other-minded, we're more caring of other people. No, 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 no. I think we care for ourselves just well.
mm,
And so I think there's something to be said about that. I think too, there is man, love loves. I think this is why love is God commands us to love, because love doesn't just affect the object of the love. It affects the one who is purveying the love. Love changes you. You have to be a type of person to care about other people more than
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And since God is trying to shape us into a type of people who is like him, like everybody has the same image. Like God is very simple. He wants us to look like him. Like, and our flesh doesn't want to look like him. And
Mm,
so I think love loves. We love more by loving, which is partly why when we go into this next piece around, like, even arranged marriage, like, there's a reason why statistically they do better, because they realize it's not about this inherent repository of love juice
mm,
and chemistry that's going to
mm,
sustain you. When
yeah.
you choose to love, it changes you. You have to choose, and it changes you. So that's the issue, I think, is that people are not, we need to love more. Your
Mm,
point, that's the struggle. Love isn't hard. Love is hard. It's hard, man. And I think the more honest we are, to your point around our natural self-centeredness, we'll at least know from a GPS, we know where we're starting. We can be honest about where we're starting and the need for love to change us so that we love more people. But I had to say that to your point.
yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and I completely agree with you. I think we spend way too much time, even in our buildings. I say this often on this show, right? We've spent so much time in our buildings feeding ourselves, even the word, feeding ourselves, conditioning ourselves, loving ourselves, building ourselves up, and all that potential energy, all that potential growth is never really, as often as it should, shared with community, share with those who are outside, share with those who really need, who maybe haven't heard all the things, all the sermons you've heard every Saturday or Sunday. They haven't heard those things, affirmations every single week. You've been full of those things every single day for who knows how long. And to
Mm.
not share that, not to share that with others or with the person who might be hearing it for the first time, yeah, you said it's an act of selfishness. And I think what makes it so hard for me is that when you know you have so much to share, but you choose to continue just to take whatever you can get because you're still trying to get to whatever perfection mindset you think you're going to reach, or you're still dealing with issues that you could have probably dealt with 20 years ago, when someone else can be benefiting from whatever you have to share from today. At what point in time do you say, you know what? It can't always be about me. It has to be about somebody else. And I think, children have that gives you an option to do that because you want to share with your children, or, if you see someone in a moment, it's different. But I think, like you're saying, this structure you guys have, and structure that many places of faith and communities of faith are giving, to say, you know what? We're not going to feed ourselves today. Let's go outside. The whole church is going to go outside and do something, Meals on Wheels, or just, whatever it's going to be, Salvation Army, whatever it's going to be. We're doing something outside of our walls today. We're not doing ourselves today. We're going to be uncomfortable today. And this day of uncomfort is going to be a day that we're going to go out there and share the word with somebody else. Yes, you're not going to have the same thing that you have every single Sunday or Saturday. You're not going to have the special music and the potluck and the whatever else. Yes, you're going to be uncomfortable. Yes, we're putting our sneakers today, not our nice shoes. But you know what? It's one day for you to go out there and say, let me share this with somebody else. Or again, like your program is, weeks and months of doing that and connecting with the community where you can actually share that with other people. I think people have a hard time with that. And for me, I guess that the struggle for me is, then maybe Christianity is not the right thing for you. Maybe this is not the space that you're supposed to be in. Because if Christianity is based on this, if this is what we're supposed to be doing, and you have a problem with that, I think we have a bigger problem that we
Doctor,
step through.
you are throwing oil on something. I wanna walk down Mount Zion and come off Kilimanjaro a bit, and I want to say that I'm not coming on any high horse. What I will say to this point that you're talking about, man, is that I have a lot of compassion. Sometimes you realize, number one, we're fed. We could feed people because we're already fed.
Right.
Right. And we're blessed so we could be a blessing. And a lot of times we think that we're called to the church, but we're called to the church to be built up, to be sent out.
Yeah.
And so we've forgotten this orientation that the thing is for us. It is us like, no, it's because of what we have in Christ that we can go out, right? Because we know that tomorrow, like forever is not this life, like forever is forever. I can be bold because I know that, I may die, but I live. But the last thing I will say is that, I do think that this is a journey over time, man. Like I got married, and like you're trying to build a family, you're doing all these things. Like sometimes you actually don't recognize the power of what you actually have, and which is why you're so consumed with the issues of yourself. So if I had the right perspective on this issue because I have Christ, I wouldn't be so consumed or debilitated by this issue.
Right.
Meaning that, Lord, I don't live for money. I do care about taking care of my family. I will go out and work, but the worries of this world shouldn't shrivel me up so much to the extent that I can only have my head down worrying. God's saying, you know the gospel so that you're free, so that normal trials that would actually inhibit people, you're not inhibited by, because I think there are a lot of people just feel like they're drowning.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're actively believing or saying, but like, I don't want to do nothing for nobody. They're like, it's just hard for me to keep the stuff that I'm supposed to do, quote unquote, including that, together. It's just like, well, do you understand the power of the power that raised Jesus from the dead is in you? Do you understand the power of what you're supposed to believe so that it could free you up to actually not be consumed? Because so many people, I always say, man, like, what if I have a bad struggle or something like that? Some of the things I actually do, I use that time to pray for other people. When I'm concerned, I actually say I'm going to pray for some other people, because the opposition is going to want me to be consumed with my stuff so that I can't focus on God's stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll say you get me worked up, man. This is awesome, man. I'm like, man, Sean, doctor.
We have to have our own show. We have to have our own show.
I'm down with it, bro. Go ahead.
Lawrence and Sean, and we're just talking about Christian issues all day. We can definitely do that.
With solutions, but go ahead.
With solutions, yes, because there was a solution. But no, it's great just to chop it up about you with these things. And I think relationships in the church are beautiful, and so much of those are dealing with people coming together, and the challenges, like you said, of just being human on a regular basis. And loneliness is one thing. That marriage can sometimes be something that can help, and people can actually also be lonely in marriages. And this book that you have, sir, that we're going to talk about right now, is something that I've been eyeing at. I've been following the journey. I've been following all the posts that you've been posting about it, and the 100 marriage decisions and declarations you need to make before getting married. offering guidance towards a prepared, lifelong marriage. Now, talk to us about the book. I know it came out this year. Without giving too much, right? Because people actually go out there and check it out. But what can people expect from this book, and what gave you the motivation to write this book in the first place?
Yeah, man, this is clearly a testimony of grace, right? Because by the grace of God, in 2016, when I started to transition a lot of my work, I was doing family dinner. I started getting invited by churches around the world around my work. They're like, we're losing a lot of young adults. So I'm doing workshops. So they know I'm a believer. I'm doing this work. But during that time, I also started getting invited, to counsel and marry people. I'm like, man, for a while,
Mm,
I have always been passionate about marriage. Now, I can't tell you the genesis,
mm,
but there was a logical piece of it where like I saw the benefit of the dynamic my parents had, and I thought it was beautiful. I always desired the relationship like their friends. They have their challenges, but like I love the dynamic. And then I went to college and I realized that not everybody has the same view of marriage.
right.
Like not everybody thinks it's important. Not everybody believes it should be prioritized. Not everybody has the experience that would at least allow them to see it through a pure
Mm,
lens. And there's just something I would say that that had impassioned me because I just said, man, I couldn't imagine going through life without what I saw as an example, how destabilizing. Now, fast forward a bit, I now start to see and start being invited by people to prepare. And at this time, I'm preparing. Obviously, I'm helping start a church. I have the theological foundation. I'm guiding people. But I thought to myself, for many people, the experiences they never have an issue being if they decide to get premarital, of being biblically prepared. Love your wife, do all this stuff. It's not never not biblical. But what many people struggle with on the other side, because then as that grew and as I started serving a lot of people who are married would come, was
mm,
that often they felt that they were equipped biblically, but not practically.
right.
Right. So from day one, this is great. I understand. It's like saying like love your wife or respect your. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't assume this generation has come from an example where they saw it and they can refine it. Because not everybody, there's no perfect parents, right?
Right.
Outside of God himself. So like to refine it. And so you take this idea, like I think like you, I was a consultant, right? Recovering consultant because I'm like I felt like it helped me because I was this problem solver. But I think part of being a good problem solver is being a good problem finder.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very easily able to like identify. I kept hearing the same things. And a lot of the most consistent things I heard from people who were married and struggle issues, it seemed like they just had different expectations.
Mm,
I'm like, did y'all not talk about this?
right.
Like this seems logical, right? You know what I'm saying? And you understand at a macro level, people are not necessarily coming from the same culture now. The beauty of the United States, the beauty of the flattening of is that now you have different cultural expectations come together. So
Mm,
sometimes it was easier if you're just kind of like, okay, we both came up in a village in Nigeria, we're both Indian, we're both Pakistan. So now you guys knew exactly, you had expectations
yeah.
communally. Now we have two different people. Now I'm expecting my wife to show up like this.
Mm-hmm.
You're expecting, or how do we make decisions?
Mm-hmm.
Or how many children are we going to have? This is
Mm-hmm.
not a given. Or after work, after I have a child, am I going back to work? Am I not? Or hey, when our parents get older, are they going to come live with us? Are they
Yeah.
not? What are we deciding to do? What are we
Yeah.
doing with our money? Or are we going to put our kids in public school?
Yeah.
When I tell you this, the tension that I consistently saw from couples was around we're not on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And these are likely things that we should have probably talked about. But even then, we still should be we should have a process by which we align. And that was the genesis of the book because as I was helping, I started writing out my own content
Mm,
in couples over these years. And affected it become the groundwork for the book. Because I said, man, I know this is serving couples, and a lot of them have thrived on feeling like you can never perfectly prepare for anything that God called. Like Abraham, go to this place. Like marriage is like going to this place I will show you. Yes,
right.
you could prepare. Yes, you could
Yeah.
understand the biblical, but you still have the other 50% is learning your spouse.
Yeah.
And then also in learning your spouse, they're going to change.
Yes.
And so there's this place of I am on this walk like Abraham was of like, you're going to continue to show me, and I just need to have faith that this is where you've called me to, and continue to show up trusting you by how I obey you and how I love my wife and or how I respect and revere my husband. Right. And so I articulated every major area of life from your faith. Like, what does that look like? Are your people going to church? Are you going to tithe? How are you going to make decisions around how do you actually count your kids? Are your kids going to go on social media earlier? Are you going to take pictures of all of the things that you would think to not think about, but you need to think about? I wanted to make life easier for everyone. And so now part of at least the use case for brothers and sisters was that we boiled it down to this 100. And that if you're single, you now actually have a process to start to articulate and prepare when you do meet somebody. What do I believe about this? People even have that with their faith. They don't even know why they believe what they believe. How do I believe in decision making in my household? How do I believe housework is going to roll? Do I want to go back to work after? Do I want to provide? Do we want to do a sole provider? Do we want to do dual income household? Are we changing our name fully? Are we hyphenating? I'm telling you.
Yeah, no,
you know what I'm saying? Like, and so now we've walked them through. So now you have a process to walk through for yourself.
Yeah.
If you're a couple who's engaged or who's looking towards marriage, now you could vet actually, they're critical things. Are we on the same page? What do I think about these things? Now we could surface it, and if we're on two different pages, we could decide what things we're aligning with. Or we could decide, you know what, this is showing us that though we have the love, we may not work.
Yeah. And
so there's a last piece of that. If you're married, for many people, they realize, man, we didn't do a lot of that fundamental work. We actually need to destroy and rebuild. What is our foundation? How are we actually going to build our marriage? How are we going to sustain our marriage? How are we going to eat things we have, even eating, food, nutrition? What are the types of foods we're going to eat in our household? Who's cooking? What are the days of the week? How are we going to manage the budget? Are we going to eat out? Or are we going to limit it to one time a week? I'm telling you, it makes your life easier. So, that was the genesis. The genesis was that the problem solver in me, it's hard for me to continue to see the same problem and not try to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
Number two, it was like an SOP for my operations people. Your standard operating procedure. It was like an SOP for marriage. It was like the Stanford PhDs who talked about designing your life. Now design your marriage. So now you guys can co-create the picture of what it looks like, and all of them is within biblical boundaries, right? And so now I get to come up with I'll offer this based on this experience that I had, as well as my own experience, and then biblically the options. I'm like, there are things that God says is black and white, but there are things that I'm like, okay, here's some options, and then there's other. So you guys may see the options and be like, that kind of works up. You know what? Actually, we're going to tithe 12%, so there's other category. Yeah. And the plan is that it's done with, it's a hardcover. It's like done with a high quality material so that after you fill this out and write it, when I marry couples who go through it, before they even do the dedication, even beforehand, they do a commitment ceremony to what they committed to. And so they have an agreement to say, because think about it, you're going to change, you may grow, you guys may have different views on these things. Yeah. You make it a commitment that, hey, if we both decide to change a view on this, we could change it. But if one person decides and the other person doesn't, we're still going to hold to what we committed to for integrity. And so now you keep this in your house. This becomes a document, this becomes like a book that's on your shelf to be like, what did we discuss and what did we commit to? And so now I think partly I feel that we are coming in a time where brothers and sisters, there are people who have great will to have a healthy marriage. We recognize that you can't have a healthy community without healthy families. You can't have healthy families without healthy marriages. Yeah. But that they're not equipped. Most of us are not coming from home. By grace of God, my parents married 50 years. But most of us are not coming. So they don't even have a model to react to. And so I wanted to offer some model so that at least they said, beyond the biblical preparation, you give me the scriptures. Now I could translate what this looks like in a day-to-day. And now I can go in feeling more prepared and less anxious that we could do this.
Yo, if you were excited about the book before, you have to be excited now. That's amazing. Again, for people who are married or even who are dating, right? Or those who are even single, just to have a framework of what to look for. And yeah, like you're saying, all that you mentioned, my wife and I, who've been married for a number of years now, since 2011, have had conversations about everything you just mentioned. Those conversations didn't always happen in marriage counseling. We had a great marriage counselor, Pastor Amos Joseph. He was amazing. He did our wedding for us. We did couples counseling. It was great. Great. But some of those questions that we talked about, you mentioned just now, were not in our immediate conversation. A lot of them were, but as you know, as time goes on, like you said, people change, people grow. The same person I am now, and my wife and I fought about. It was really me about name change and taking my name. I was so boisterous. Oh, you gotta have my last name. And I look at the conversation now. I'm like, yo, what was my deal back then? Like, what was I even talking about? It was 13 years ago. I was so adamant about it. But now I'm like, yo, who cares? I don't care about any kind of stuff. And I think a lot of the processing comes with growth. And you mentioned something else about breaking it down to build it up. And I think for me, as someone who's been married for 13 years, soon in September,
Praise God. So salute.
yes, yes,
Y'all
sir.
put the sound effect, the claps on that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I feel like so much of the growth has been really about us figuring out who we are and me finding ways to love her more, the way that she needs to be loved. Like you said, I have a way, she has a way. Culturally is different. Her parents were in arranged marriage. She comes from an Indian culture. So arranged marriages were the way that they were. My parents met, and my parents actually got divorced after 20 years. So we came with very different different ways of life, very different perceptions on what relationships are, but we've grown together to figure out what is us, right? What our family's gonna look like, and everything you mentioned just now, we've had in conversations sometimes. So the fact that there's a guide out there that puts those things at the forefront to be like, yo, let's talk about this. Because some of those things you would never really know unless you spent more time and effort with somebody. And I think one of the challenges is that people get frustrated when, and this was how I was years ago, when you're with somebody and you're dating, when things start to go awry, or when the first argument comes up, or when the honeymoon phase is over, it's like, all right, you know what? This might not be working out. So
Ma'am,
cool.
ma'am. Yep.
and,
You
and then the same thing happens with somebody else. And it's like, yo, where's gonna be the time where you figure out who you really are? Like, where's the time when you figure out what you really stand for? The time when you figure out what you can really deal with or want to deal with in a relationship, and if you even are ready for that. So I'm just grateful that you created something that young people, older people, married people, single people, everyone can really latch to and have as a guide for those who are in counseling and those who might not even want to do counseling for whatever reason that is, right? I'm sure you can talk about that as well. But as long as there's something that's out there that people can latch to and say, this is a blueprint for relationships, I think that's fantastic.
Brother, man, I really appreciate, affirmation again. Congratulations again for 13 years. We need it. And I have to say this because I do believe, again, we've been duped. And there's a lot of unlearning that is required, not only just to even be, because there used to be a time when people would assume that everybody wanted to believe in God and be Christian. And now, I think over time you realize that you can't assume that.
Right.
That you're not starting from, even in your evangelical, evangelism, let's be clear, your evangelism, that this person has this foundation, so I got to just connect the dots for them. No, it's a completely different time. Similarly, we're getting to a time we can't assume that everybody wants to be married either.
Right.
And there's a lot of times, often from wounds and perspectives. And so, I think one of the things that I share is that there has to also be one unlearning one of our assumptions about people, because I do think that if you start from there, because there, even those people who are unsure that they want to, or they don't have the same motivations that people over the past had, part of this is kind of breaking it down in a way that I think is helpful for them, because I think the unlearning part is also, the unlearning is that people keep thinking that you have to find love. No, 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 no. You don't find love, you make love. And I think unlearning the Hollywood view is that I look across. And now, again, I'm not saying that we as brothers, especially, we didn't see our wives and be like, hey man, like this is it. But if you over index on that, if you provide or get married or commit to someone on feelings, you're going to lose them on feelings too.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a process that is not tied to, right? This is a separate from marriage is about God and imaging our relationship with him, and that this is bigger than us. And that, let's take that out. Just think about logically, if my feelings change day to day, if I believe that marriage is just about feelings, then I'm going to deprioritize preparation. So I don't think that, I'm just automatically, I'm a husband. You got to be trained to be a husband. You got to be trained to be a wife.
Yeah.
You need skills to be a husband. You need, so I think part of even, you have to even open up a whole nother side to people to be like, I gotta prep. First, now I gotta just find my person. It's like, fam, if you found your person, you have a high likelihood of losing that person because
Mm.
you're not equipped.
Mm.
Or even when you found the person, you didn't do the preparation, and so there's no way it's gonna last because you keep thinking it's going to roll on feelings.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm gonna tell you this. Every brother and sister will tell you, like, I have not met America over the time who at some point didn't feel like, hey man, I'm out.
Yeah.
Right. But then both people, like, they were committed to something bigger and they made choices in spite of their feelings.
Yeah.
And so I think this is why I think this is so important to say you need to open up a mind that marriage is not more about I need to find my person. It's like even after I find my person, I need to be prepared to be the person that person needs.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be prepared to be the couple that is going to sustain each other, and that requires us actually talking through. Because some part of it is that people want to talk about these things. I'll give an example to kind of pin it for us. Is that I'll go in premarital counseling, and I love premarital counseling. I love it. I have so much fun. Shout out to my couple. I've done nearly 200 of these things,
Wow.
man. And like when we have the conversation of sex, usually that gets people ooh. And a lot of times I've never heard a couple who said like we don't want to have a lot of sex when we get married. But when I now go through this, and when we talk about sex, even in the book,
Mm-hmm.
I have them separately. They don't talk about it. I say, I put a number. What is a lot of sex? What is it as measured by what? How many numbers of time is that for you?
Mm-hmm.
You'll have somebody that says twice a month. Somebody who says 3 times a week. They both said they want to have a lot of sex, but what they defined as a lot of sex specifically
Mm-hmm.
was, imagine if those people went in, imagine the tumult unconsciously, because we got to assume people even communicate their issues.
Right.
Obviously you do that and communicate, but like something as common as saying that we assume that we're speaking the same language. And so if there's anything to take away, there's a great book that I'll even offer as well. Another book, it's called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. These were former Intel, Google people, and they talked about process and systems that they used to align in strategic plan.
Mm.
And they used to ask this question, as measured by what? So a lot of sex is measured by what? Meaning like how many times?
Right.
Okay, we're aligned on decision making as measured by what? What is the unit? How we define decision making in in our household, and how do we align on where we finally land?
Mm-hmm.
That just helps people to say, like, sometimes we think we're communicating clearly and we're not. We're filling in the story in our head and assuming the other person understands. Oh yeah, we just told us so we need to love each other every day. And
Mm.
love for you may mean that each morning she affirms you, says like I deeply respect you, and love for her
Right.
means that you spending quality time. So I say that to say, man, it would behoove people if they believe. It's like if they believe that they're called to this man and they really care about that person, to humble themselves enough to say, at least I did everything I could to prepare. And I think this would help people prepare.
Yeah. Pastor, where can people find the book? If they want to get a copy today, where can they go to find the book so they can have it for themselves?
Most definitely, man. So you could find the book on lawrenceadjah.com / the marriage book, the 100 marriage book. But you could go to lawrenceadjah.com and you'll see the link to the book right on my website. But you also can. So the reason why I direct people to the website in part is that I love having the relationship. So one of the beautiful things that happened over the past year is that I just don't want to be another person complaining or talking about the situation of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say someone after this has done this book. The beautiful thing is that think about now that somebody's gone through and actually put their views on these things. You actually now have a diagnostic. You actually imagine if you have a brother and sister who don't know each other, who both bought the book.
Right.
Now could be like, wow, we actually align on what's most important. So now I actually know that y'all could work. It's going to be up to you whether you align or not.
Right.
This is actually challenging people in their views. And so we decided to say, hey, beyond just having this resource,
Yeah.
for people who are single,
Yeah.
they can now buy the book and they're automatically put in a pool. And if there are people who actually, and in that pool, they get to actually fill out an assessment that's based on the book, and it scores them.
Yeah.
And if there's somebody within 10%, we make the introduction.
Come on.
We actually do the introductory, we call it arranged marriage for this time. We do the introductory conversation. And now a lot of them have 3 conversations. First one's free. They just come and they do that. They can agree to it. And then the second one, they actually invite their family to join them on that. So they're able to meet them. We keep it separate, and we steward the process, because I think people who generally want to, but they don't. They realize, like, man, I don't choose well,
Yeah.
or even though this is giving me, this will help. So the reason why I encourage the website is that it makes it easier for us, because it is available on other outlets. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on most of your major bookstores, and so you can order it from there. It's more expensive on these other platforms, by the way. But two, you also may miss out on the ability to be a part of that community as well. But as the community, because you automatically are entered once we get your information. And then lastly, I would say that, you can on social media, you can find me at Adjah_L, my last name _L. But my website is pretty much the home base to find me for anything.
Man, you are a community builder for real. I mean, people talk about building communities and, they're in the community, but you're doing that in so many ways. It's really amazing to see that. It's really amazing to see that. And my last question for you, and I've asked this for everybody on the show, how they intend to be more in 2024. I know the year is winding down. We're in the last quarter now of 2024, but how have you, or how are you still trying to be more in this year, 2024?
Mm. A idea that has been, I think, ruminating in my mind, and that's been actually a value for my wife and our family, but also I think God's been telling me, is like, saying less is more. And less is more is that I think, you believe sometimes that I needed to be doing more things. But I realized, like, this hit me, and I'm speaking from experience, and I'm speaking as someone who's like navigating this. It's very easy to recognize the appetite and the diet of the United States when you leave. And you realize that, like, our serving sizes are bigger. We are generally, bigger. And a lot of it's a product of environment, the food and everything. And sometimes you go to other places, you don't realize that the appetite is outsized.
Mm-hmm.
But similarly, sometimes I also realize, I believe that sometimes our lifestyles are obese. And that it's normalized to have no margin. It's normalized that you have multiple colors. You get up and it's back to back to back to back to back to back to back. Man, I realized I took a time, a sabbatical digital, man. I'm like, it's hard to be thoughtful if you don't make time to think. It's hard I don't have time to think. I'm just operating from things. Do you think that we're doing too much? And so I think in this time, I'm realizing, I'm just like, there's something about depth. It's something I'm like, man, having time to just be present with my wife, or have enough time that I'm not overburdened. I can call someone and just be present, not always be in a rush to head to something. I'm like, there's something about the scripture that says the quiet, simple life. The quiet, simple life doesn't mean that we're not living radical life for God. The quiet, simple life does not mean that we're not doing much and being great stewards and multiplying our gifts and talents. It just means, are you so sure that the appetite, are you so sure that the lifestyle we have is really the godly one that leaves enough space for us to worship, to pray, to be present, to not be anxious, to not always feel like we're in a rush, man? It's like, and so I think for me to be more in 2024, I have to understand that less is more, that I don't have to do more to actually do more. And so that's my desire, is that I'm going to be planted, be where my feet are planted, that I'm going to steward what God has in my hands well, the relationship that God's have given me, brothers that I'm connected to, that he's already connected me, steward those well. And I think that he'll bring more fruit from my life if I am rooted in my life.
Mm. Mm. Well said, sir. I appreciate you so much. And yeah, less is more is a real thing. I'm trying to be less also in this year. So hopefully we can do it together. But Lawrence, I really appreciate you, man. You made this to one for the books again. And listen, I may have to do a part 2 to this one, because I feel like relationships are a big conversation piece, and I may have to bring you back to talk more about relationships and what we can do as people who are, again, single or married, just to be better and more accountable to the growth that we can do for each other, whether it means getting over our own biases, or just making sure that we're listening to each other more as we grow together. I'd love to talk to you more about that. So we'll talk about that offline. But I appreciate you so much, sir. You just please just know that you're great.
Brother, man, you're great, man. And I have such great honor, respect for you, man. I thank you, man, for being for being out of the way, and God's light shining through you, man. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I pray that we will actually, may it be so, so shall it be, so it is, man, that we'll get some time to fellowship in this coming year, man. So thank you for the opportunity. And brother, yeah, maybe we do a Q&A, a live recording, and then some of your listeners can come on, and then they can ask their questions as you actually ask it. So I'm down anything special for your community, I would love to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get the book going first. And for again, folks who are listening, the book is on Amazon, but also on his site. Well, just give them again the name of the site and where they can follow you on social media if they want to follow you directly one more time.
Most definitely. My website, lawrenceadjah.com. Again, the best price, promotion price there, go there for that. I would promote that. So lawrenceadjah.com, and then you'll go to books, and then you'll see the 100 Marriage book there, and it's available. And then again, if you're trying to do the arranged marriage, that's the way to go. But you could find it in wherever you find your books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You'll be able to find the book there.
Awesome. Awesome. Lawrence, thank you again so much. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully in person sometime soon. I haven't been to Texas. That's the one state I have not been to. One of the one states that I have not been to yet in this country. And I need to make a visit there. I got a lot of friends there, people who moved from New York there, including you. So I have to make my way to Texas. So when that does happen, sir, I'm knocking on your door. We're going for a run together. We're going to figure this out. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
This is your conscience.
It is. It's just talking.
I can't wait for it, brother. I can't wait.
We're gonna make it happen. So, folks, he said so many poignant things. I love having him on the show. I love having him on the show. My brother, man, we just connect on so many ways. From talking about the church, talking about people. He's a rock star. And folks, if you do want to follow him, please go on the social media platforms. Follow him, follow his story, buy the book, buy the book. I'm gonna read the book myself. I need to. I'll probably grab it with my wife as well and read it together. But there are so many things that we learned today just about relationships and about community. And I'm excited to go out there and yes, continue to serve, but also to go out there and inspire others to do it, not just for the community, but also for themselves, to get out of the feed ourselves mentality, and to go out there and serve others, but also for those who are looking for connections, looking for community. Whether you want to join Lawrence and his platform or other platforms, find your niche, find your community, find your people, find people who are trying to do what you're doing to avoid the loneliness that can happen. And he talked about the lack of contact with people can literally shrink your brain on a regular basis. 24 hours. That's not a long time for that to happen. So let's go off our phones. Let's connect more. Let's talk more. And like the quote said today, make sure you steward your relationships well, because it's not about getting to the top. It's who you're getting to the top with. Let's go up there with like-minded people. Let's win together. Let's be more, also being less, but let's be more, folks, as we continue to go out there and to do more in 2024. I salute all of you. I will see you next time. And as always, have a good day, have a good night, have a great life, and continue to be more in 24. Peace.